Some of the things that teachers can do to avoid problems in the classroom or managing them when they arise is providing children choices, a peace space, and positive reinforcement. Now, it's been my experience that most kids will try and test limits and argue. However, when a child becomes so hostile to the point where the behavior interferes with their daily life, that behavior is sometimes diagnosed as oppositional defiant disorder or ODD. Students with ODD often disrupt not only their own lives, but the lives of those nearby. The behavior that they demonstrate is much more extreme than that of other students and happens much more often. Welcome to episode 111 of the Teacher Rockstar Podcast, a place where tips and strategies critical to the new teacher are discussed. I'm your host, Steve Hiles, and in today's episode, I want to talk about tips to help students with ODD. But before we get right to it, here's a word from our sponsor. Would you like to supercharge your classroom management skills? Well, if you're a first-year teacher, a student teacher, or perhaps maybe you are a teacher returning back into the classroom after an extended absence, the Teacher Rockstar Academy course is for you. Gain the confidence, the skills you'll need to crush it on day one and beyond. So invest in yourself and enroll now at tra.teacherclassroomresources.com. That's tra.teacherclassroomresources.com. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about tips to help students with ODD. I want to go ahead and quote what the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry states. I quote, "Kids with ODD exhibit an ongoing pattern of uncooperative, defiant, and hostile behavior toward authority figures that seriously interferes with the child's day-to-day functioning for 6 months or more." End quote. Now, a teacher's initial reaction to a child exhibiting this type of behavior might be to react defensively, and that's understandable, okay? However, this is not a good idea as it can backfire on you and result in a power struggle between the teacher and the student. When a teacher is given the right tools and environment, students with ODD can learn effective strategies to help them have positive and effective interactions with other students. Now, we're going to go ahead and discuss a few ways in which teachers can provide assistance to students who are ODD. Okay, tip number one, and this is very, very important here. Be calm and consistent. The worst thing that one can do is react with anger, as that will make matters much, much worse. Instead, react calmly and keep a positive tone in your voice, neutral body language, and avoid entering a child's personal space. Now, being consistent in words and deeds is very, very important when working with students with ODD. Using the same set of trigger words will help in letting the student know what the teacher expects and that the teacher is serious. Tip number two, reinforce positive behavior. Now, obviously, this is important for all children, but especially for children with ODD. Praise the child when he or she is making good choices. Making positive phone calls or sending positive notes to parents also pays off well. What seems to work well in these situations is offering the child a certain privilege instead of taking something away. An example may be to have extra computer time or draw or perhaps lunch with the teacher. Tip number three, find out what's going on, figuring out factors that's causing the child to act out in the first place, which can really help the teacher in formulating a behavior plan. Picking up on physical signs when a student is agitated, such as balling up fists or withdrawing from class activities, is something that should not be ignored. After all, these minor behaviors can quickly escalate. Tip number four, create a safe space. Children with ODD can learn to recognize when they're feeling overwhelmed and just need a reset. So giving them a space where they can calm down and rethink their choices can be very, very helpful. I want to share with you what one particular school did. At Fall Hamilton Elementary School, a trauma-informed school in Nashville, Tennessee, for example, every classroom has a nook called a Peace Corner with a comfortable seat, a timer, and items like stuffed animals, sensory squeeze toys, and simple drawing and writing supplies. It's a spot where kids can take a break and reset. The school also recognizes that teachers may need a timeout too. Using a strategy called tap in, tap out, teachers can ask a colleague via text message to briefly cover their class if they are about to lose their cool. I think this is a very, very good strategy to use. Okay, tip number 5, offering choice. By offering choice, students feel respected and their sense of belonging and attitude improve. Now, this is a very important point to remember here. Avoid ultimatums like, well, if you don't stay in your seat, I'm going to send you to the office. A better way to handle that would be to tell the child, I see that you're upset, but it's not okay to yell at me. By offering them a choice as to either sit in the peace corner or go get a drink of water and come back in 5 minutes. When things are heating up, the last thing you want to do is avoid a heated argument with the student, right? State your choices and then walk away. This will give the student time to process and decide which choice to make. Now, should the student try to argue with you again, simply restate the choices and then walk away. If it happens again, then they do not get to participate in their favorite activity. Tip number 6, build connections. And I think this is a very critical point here. Building a relationship with a teacher who can help them deal with problems on their own instead of standing out in a negative way is all that most children with ODD really want. By building connections with them, we'll get to the root of the problem. Teachers can feel the need to create boundaries with students, and understandably so. But simply having informal conversations with them can build invaluable connections that will influence their behavior in the classroom. Friend, managing students with ODD is not an easy task. I got lots of experience with that. But if you're in the teaching profession long enough, the odds are you're going to experience students with ODD. But making yourself approachable to your students, learning interesting things about them, and I don't mean just surface stuff like their name and how many brothers or sisters they have, but, I'm talking about things like their favorite hobbies, what do they like to do on the weekends, etc. Now, this will invariably pay big dividends in the classroom. Well, this brings us to the end of this episode. Hope you found a golden nugget or two from the information presented. Feel free to reach out should you have any questions or comments about the episode. I want to thank you for listening to the Teacher Rockstar podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hiles. When you get a moment, visit my blog and subscribe to my newsletter for the latest educational research, best practices, and unadvertised free bonuses. Go to blog.teacherclassroomresources.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us at the Teacher Rockstar podcast. And if you'd like to support us, please feel free to share our podcast with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. That would be greatly appreciated. Thanks again, and we'll see you same time, same place next week. And remember, my friend, you got this.